Hello and welcome to SharpHR Career Corner with Karen Sharp Price. This podcast will inform and inspire you in your quest to find the right career path. If you're just starting out, looking to make a change in your field, or transitioning into a new career, then this podcast is for you. We will be sharing tips and providing resources on topics such as writing resumes, interviewing, using LinkedIn, and networking. We will take a look at different careers, companies, and opportunities. You will hear success stories from professionals in all career paths, and so much more. You will leave this podcast with 3 key takeaways that you can easily put into practice. Enjoy!
Welcome to SharpHR Career Corner podcast. I'd like to welcome Tracey Howes. Tracey is going to talk to us about functional breath work. But first, Tracey, can you tell us about your passion for the water? When did that all start?
Thank you, Karen. Yes, I grew up in South Africa and I was a water baby. We lived near the ocean, so I spent my weekends in the surf with my dad. Very much loved being in and around water. And when I moved from South Africa to the UK, landlocked, there wasn't any ocean to play in, but I'd find swimming pools to enjoy, and I became PADI certified. So I got my scuba certification. Okay. And a few years ago, I discovered free diving, and I realized you could actually learn this as a certification and a sport, and you could compete. And what I love about free diving is it's essentially diving underwater without the use of any breathing apparatus, but you're also not encumbered with equipment. So you're very free, essentially, under the water. And when you combine that with breath control, you can have quite remarkable experiences. So yeah, it's a passion.
How deep do you go?
My comfort zone, like I wouldn't go deep at the moment, is 20 meters. But I could dive deeper in warmer water. So in the UK, we have quite cold water, and that affects the relaxation process. So you don't tend to go as deep.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know if I could do that. So tell us, like, from your career story, where did you begin and when did things take a turn for you?
Well, at the risk of running through the CV, my background in brief, I started in retail, and then I moved into fashion, and then in the UK, I really focused on hospitality marketing. I really enjoyed the hotel, restaurant, travel industry, and I'd always been drawn to the creative side of things. So I did a lot of events, marketing, and when social media became a force to be reckoned with, I just thought this is amazing because you can combine networking online. So, I just thought this was brilliant. And so I had my own restaurant marketing consultancy in London for almost 12 years. Wow. And it was something that I loved. I still love the industry, but I made a decision back in 2017 to change locations. So I moved from the big smoke, as it were, back to the coast so I could be closer to my family and the ocean. And that triggered a whole lot of other changes in terms of my career. Would you like me to expand?
Yeah. So at that point, it sounds like you were really successful in what you were doing. You were happy. You loved the industry. But it seemed also too that the water was pulling you in some respects, trying to bring you back to where you started.
It definitely has had an impact on my life. And there's an amazing book that I read called Blue Mind. And it was written by an American marine biologist. He wrote this amazing book on the power of water and how it influences the body on a cellular level, and psychologically, physically, mentally. And I was really drawn to that. And that was also during the time when I was starting to get into free diving.
Okay.
But one of the big changes for me was my health changed about 5 years ago. And I went from being just very healthy normally, no problems generally, to having very severe panic attacks. And this impacted on my sleep. My anxiety levels were very high, and I just felt really out of sorts for about 18 months. And looking back, and hindsight, of course, is a great thing, but I do believe that at that point I was probably close to burning out. I had 2 companies in London. I loved what I did. I'm a go-getter. I don't know when to stop. And I think the body just went, you know what? You need to stop.
Wow.
And that was a proper pause button for me, because I couldn't be as productive as I was. And I mentally felt like I needed support. So a family member said to me, look, you've done all the health checks and the doctors have given you the all clear. And I'm thinking, well, that's great, but I don't feel like everything is great.
Yeah.
And he recommended trying meditation. And this is kind of where the mental well-being, along with the water, it all starts to make sense as my story goes along.
Yeah.
And meditation was my first introduction to the use of breath work to calm the nervous system and create a state of calm in your mind, that you can actually take better control back of your body. And it was a profound experience, and that really triggered a lot of changes that then happened in my life going forward.
So did you see the connection, or did somebody make that connection for you? Because you were already in the water, you were already doing some of that, but the meditation was a different piece for you. How did you bring those 2 pieces together?
The meditation was the starting point. I had been scuba diving at that point, and I only started free diving a year later, after I'd experienced the meditation.
Oh, okay.
And I had been reading this book, as I mentioned, Blue Mind. I'd been practicing the meditation techniques, nasal breathing, and the free diving was very much about breath control for sports performance. But what I found through my research, because I was fascinated, I just thought, I want to learn more about breathing techniques, just because I feel so much better. And I discovered another book called The Oxygen Advantage, which was written for sports performance, but had a wealth of information around improving your general well-being. And I can use a pun here, but I did a deep dive into breathwork from that point onwards, and I haven't looked back. And I started to understand the science behind it. Why did meditation with nasal breathing work? What happens to the nervous system, the brain, and the impact that has on your general health and well-being? And for the last 5 years, I've kind of just been researching it. I got certified in 2021 as a functional breathwork instructor, so that I could teach others what I'd learned.
So you were in the hospitality industry, things were going great. You decided to move back near the water and home. You then started to get the panic attacks, but you had 2 companies, right? You had started 2 companies. You can correct me in there.
Yeah, I had 2 companies, but I was in London at the time. The panic attacks were happening there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Is that what helped you make the decision to move back?
Definitely helped me make the decision, but I also wanted to be closer to nature, because I knew that would nurture me. It had in the past, and I'd lost contact with that.
Okay. That had to be a hard decision, though, because when your career is going well and you enjoy what you're doing, and your health kind of knocks at the door and says, wait a minute, you forgot something. That's a hard place to be to make those decisions, or wasn't. Maybe at that time it wasn't, because it was more clear at that point for you.
It was only clear after I'd done the meditation practice. In the lead up, I could feel that there was this pressure building, and I didn't really understand, how that manifested. It just things felt difficult. Like it didn't feel as comfortable and as easy as it had before in the past.
And I think it's so important because I think a lot of people come to that crossroad in their life, and it can be work, it can be relationships, it can be not knowing where to go, but not being happy where you are and feeling that being stuck. So you really pushed yourself to try to figure this out. And it seems as though you were being pushed in a certain direction. So you move back home, you're near water again. What started to change for you then? Because you had already started the meditation and things like that.
Yeah. I think as soon as I made the decision to change location, I felt a sense of relief, because I knew that I would actually be able to shift the pressure that I was under by moving somewhere else, and actually closed one of my businesses because it felt like it had come to its natural end. And even when you don't live in a big city, if you live further out, you could still commute, you could still work remotely. The pandemic's proved that to us. And I did that for about 6 months, and I still had my clients, I still had my business. But I was actively practicing breathing techniques, meditation, and free diving. And I just think that combination of factors brought about clarity of mind that I hadn't had before.
So do you look at that experience as a blessing for a new opportunity?
I'm so grateful. In the moment it was really challenging, but when you put yourself in a situation where, and this is the only way I can describe this meditation practice, it was a silent retreat. So for 10 days, I've had peace and quiet. No one spoke, we didn't speak to each other. We were in this beautiful place. But I had felt in the lead up to that I needed to get rid of all this excess noise in my life. And what's interesting is when you stop talking, the mind gets super active because it's not used to that. And it likes to take over, and it likes to challenge. And I remember about 6 or 7 days into that retreat, I was literally climbing the walls thinking, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I here? What am I doing to myself? This is so hard.
Yeah.
And I have to say my teachers were incredibly patient. They guided us. They just said, take it one day at a time. And by day 8, I think I must have had what you would call a breakthrough. I just woke up feeling refreshed. My sleep had improved in a week, like dramatically. And I just felt calmer in myself. And and this is something I'm very, very keen to share with my students, is when they start to become more self-aware, you start to trust yourself and go, you know what, I can do this, or I feel this and it's good for me. So therefore, let me try that again. So it was very, I think, organic, for lack of a better word, because it just happened the way it happened for me. And I was just very curious. I wanted to know why this worked, and I wanted to understand the science behind it. Because, to be fair, the yogis have known this for thousands of years. But now we have the understanding of what actually goes on chemically, physiologically. And when you put all of that information together, for me, I just thought this is so exciting. I can't wait to share it with more people.
So I have one question about the meditation, and then we'll go on to what you're doing now. But how difficult is it to be around other people and not slip up and start asking questions? Because you didn't really get to know any of them, correct?
We met on the first evening when we all arrived, and there was about 150 people there.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot of people.
And it was a very humble location near a forest, all built by volunteers and non-religious, in the sense that it was focusing on the technique of nasal breathing and guiding you, rather than having any kind of spiritual connection.
Okay.
But we know meditation comes from Buddhist practice. So I went into it with a very open heart and mind,
Yeah.
and everyone was there for very personal reasons. They don't really share that with you in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then you just have this 9 days of silence.
Wow.
And then the very last day, so day 10, you get comfortable with it. Although some people left, there was a few people who left in the first 2 or 3 days. It wasn't for them. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
But I think I just found solace in that, and it gives you a real sense of inner strength.
Yeah.
Because you have to accept what you are and how you feel and the thoughts you have, and remind yourself that thoughts are not facts.
Yeah, we have to remind that of ourselves all the time. Yeah, yeah. And I would think that women listening to this would be like, 10 days of silence. Like, sign me up right now. That would be really great. So tell us, so what are you doing now?
So where I am now, after that turbulence and a lot of change in a very short space of time, I continued with my business. And then 2019, 2020, as we know, the world stopped for a while.
Yeah.
And that was another opportunity to just take a step back and think about what I wanted to do. So I took the business I had in London and I rebranded it to a social media training consultancy, because it was something that I really enjoyed doing, and I could do it online. But the story is that I actually used images of my free diving on my website, and I had the strapline deep dive into social media, which I thought was very clever. And in my About Me page, I was writing, I've mentioned I do free diving, hence the imagery, some breath work. And, I just left it there. And people would look at the website and we talk about the social media and the training. And then they'd ask me about breath work and free diving, because it's, they'd be curious.
Yeah.
But this started to happen a lot more. And I was thinking, okay, this is not what I expected. And I had a mentor at the time who just said to me, you really need to listen to your audience. What are they asking you for? And at the end of 2020, I took the decision to completely pivot, change my business. And I went back to the Oxygen Advantage and signed up to become a certified instructor. And now, 18 months later, I'm an advanced breathwork instructor. I continue to train every week for my free diving practice. And I bring these two together in my training to help others really get a handle on their breath so they can improve their health and well-being, as well as sports performance, if that's something they want to do.
Okay. Wow. So what types of people do you generally work with? Like, what types of issues can you help?
It's very broad. On one hand, I may have clients coming to me who have got some kind of chronic lung condition. They've had clinical support, and they're on medical treatment, but they're looking for something natural that will support them through recovery, particularly with long COVID, asthma, bronchiectasis, where the lungs produce excess mucus, COPD, where lung function is really reduced. So that's kind of, I would say, more on the, the medical, because I'm not a doctor by any means. So I would work alongside their practitioner and support them. I would say the rest of my clients are a mixture of recreational athletes, so people who are runners, cyclists, swimmers, also mountaineering, because we teach simulated high altitude training for that. Or I'll have individuals that are generally very healthy, but they want to really improve their lung function, so they will improve their immunity and their longevity as part of their overall well-being. But it really is very unique. So one, for example, would be women dealing with menopausal changes, because progesterone has a major impact on how we breathe. So,
really?
Yeah. And we
Wow.
now have the research and the medical science to back this up. We actually end up over breathing because progesterone stimulates the respiratory system. And when it dips in menopause, this affects not just your breathing, but your sleep.
Yeah.
So if you've never had a sleep disorder before, you may end up snoring or suffering from insomnia, or even worst case scenario, sleep apnea. So there is a whole other side to it where I think people are starting to realize now actually breathing is a hugely important part of the overall package when it comes to holistic well-being.
So does your work primarily take place in the water, or is there a lot of exercises outside of the water that they have to do?
So I don't teach people how to free dive.
Okay.
All of my work happens out the water.
Okay.
I would like to train to be an instructor one day, but the free diving for me is a way of telling stories, and I use some of the exercises that we use out of the water, which sits nicely alongside what we do for general health practices. So all of the exercises are either done over Zoom or in face-to-face.
Wow.
What we call in the freediving world dry training. You've got to get your breathing right out of the water first, and then you can add more advanced techniques for any kind of sports performance. But for most people I work with that are not into the sports side of things, they will just come to me for functional breathwork training, which is getting their day-to-day breathing right. So how they breathe when they're awake, how they breathe when they sleep, and how they breathe when they exercise.
I know that about 5 years ago, I started to take a class to get me ready to do just a small running. It was like a 5K. And the piece that always slowed me down was the breathing piece. Like that's what got me. I think my body would have kept up, but my breathing was like killing me. And for someone who's never smoked, I don't get it. And when I was younger, I was very athletic, but once you hit that 50 mark, it's true. Your body changes, and the way in which you breathe really does make a difference. So that's really interesting. And it's interesting that you're all the way across, the world, and you can help people in the United States because you work remotely, and so you can touch anybody at any point and really help them out. So that's great. So if someone wanted to reach out to you to see if your techniques could possibly help them, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, I have a new website being built. So for now, I have a linktree.com address, which I think you'll include in the show notes.
Yes. Yep.
And that gives people direct access. They can set up a video call with me. They can email me. They can also listen to my other podcasts, read some articles, watch some videos, and get a real sense of what a functional breathing training would look like.
Yeah.
And of course, if they're on social media, I'm very happy to chat. I'm on Instagram under my name and LinkedIn.
Okay, great. And what 3 pieces of advice would you give to people that might be struggling themselves right now? So if you go back to the moment in your career where things started to change because of panic attacks, and I think panic attacks are really a call to action for a lot of people. I mean, I know I had them in my early 20s. I think that somewhere along the way, everybody probably can relate to that. It's sort of a real red flag for people that stop and really evaluate what's going on in your life. But what advice would you give somebody who might be at that moment where you were struggling?
Is to not be afraid to ask for help. I just pushed on through thinking, and this is typical of high-performing individuals. You've got that racing mind, you just go, go, go. You're used to working to a deadline and nothing's going to stop you until your health does.
Yeah.
And when you're starting to, and I think people are becoming more self-aware, they're starting to ask better questions of themselves. But there are times where you just don't think that way because you're under so much stress that rational thinking goes completely out the window.
Yeah.
So a quick win if you're feeling overwhelmed, and that's very easy for us all to understand how that feels, is just to slow your breathing down. Literally 90 seconds of slow inhales and exhales through the nose with your mouth closed can reset the nervous system. And that can really just help to calm you. And it will also increase oxygen to the brain. So, there's a myriad of techniques that we learn, through the functional breathing platform that I work with. However, day to day, we all overbreathe, and we breathe from our upper chest and we mouth breathe. And mouth breathing is what probably caused you to feel out of breath when you were exercising, because you're putting all this pressure on the top of your chest, not knowing because you were breathing through your mouth.
Yeah.
So nasal breathing is the magic ingredient to start retraining respiratory health. And for a lot of people, that is a difficult thing to do if they have very congested sinus cavities.
Oh, okay.
But there are simple things you can do, like short breath holds, as well as just retraining and being aware. I'm walking with my mouth open. I'll close my mouth, breathe through the nose. There are decongestion exercises where you hold your nose and nod up and down on breath hold. And that will open up the sinus cavity, because we have a molecule in our sinuses called nitric oxide that's not produced in the mouth. So when you breathe through your nose, that opens up the airways because it relaxes the blood vessels. So a little bit of knowledge can make such a difference. But when you are in that state of overwhelm, or before you get into a panic attack, but you could feel the stress levels rising because the cortisol is starting to spike in the blood, slow everything down. Just start with that, and that will help.
Okay. As you were talking, I had my mouth open and I closed it. And I started to try to just breathe through my nose. So I think all day long today, I'm going to be doing that, thinking about, how often I'm actually breathing through my mouth, which I think you just do. And I think when you're running, like, I don't know, for me, because I'm just not a runner. My husband's a runner. So like, that's just him. So he knows how to do it. But when I was doing it, I just needed oxygen. I didn't care where it was coming from, whether it was through my nose or my mouth. I just needed it, but I wasn't doing it the right way, obviously. So thank you so much, Tracey. I really appreciate this. Every time that I talk to you, I learn something new, and it really is fascinating. I can see how you really took to it. I mean, you had the love of the water to begin with, but then, you show the passion that you have for it and in the interest. And, I know that you're making a big difference in many people's lives. And if anybody's listening to this and wants to learn more, I highly recommend to just reach out and have a conversation, because boy, it could make the difference. Why stress out if you don't have to? So thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. And I've just remembered the name of the author of the book.
Oh, good.
And Wallace J. Nichols.
Okay.
The book is called Blue Mind. Absolutely beautiful book about the health of and what water can do for the body.
I will include that too in the notes, just so and I might just pick that book up myself and read it. So thank you again. I really do appreciate it. And every time we talk, I learn something new about functional breathwork. I had no idea until we actually met several months ago, I guess now, that it even was a thing. So it's very, very interesting. So thank you again. And thank you, everyone. If you've been sitting on the fence and you really dislike what you're doing in your job, thinking about making a move, but not sure where to begin, contact Sharp Human Resources. We can help you make sense of the process. Go to sharphumanresources-buffalo.com. Until next time, be kind, everyone. We need to show a lot more kindness in the world, and it starts with you and I. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.